Now, I often like to start the lesson if there's anything interesting that I've done in family history in the previous week. And there is. On Memorial Day, well, I grew up in Texas where there was no family around and no family buried. So we never ever established the family tradition of visiting cemeteries on Memorial Day. But a few years ago, it dawned on me that I have relatives buried in Utah. And so I started and I went to one cemetery in Springville. And the next year I went to both Springville cemeteries. And then next year I went down to Fountain Green and we went to see our family that's buried in Fountain Green. And then last year I expanded it to Parowan and went to see the cemetery in Parowan where I have family buried. And last year I had printed out all the sheets about them from Find a Grave, and that kind of gave me some interesting history. And then I got a book and on the history of the county and got actually of the Iron Mission, and got more information about my ancestor and enjoyed learning about it. But this time I kind of paid attention to the fact that he had been married 3 times, not just once. And so I set about to learn a little bit about his other wives, and they just did not have enough stuff in memories to do me much good. And so, but as I looked more on Family Search for them, I found out that his second wife had been married twice before. And I read a little bit, trying to find out more about her. I read a little bit about their histories. And I found out that one of her first husband was a survivor from the Hans Mill massacre.
Ooh.
And his testimony and stories of that were very interesting. And I was very interested in it. And I read more and studied a few other things, but I still had a very spotty picture of her life. And so I went over to our Family History Center, and we have a 4-volume set called Pioneer Women of Faith and Fortitude. And so I looked them up in that collection and found a history that put together the rest of the pieces that I needed. And it was very interesting how she came to be, with bringing with her into the marriage 6 children. And as a young widow, and 2 of those children were Indian children that her husband had saved from Indian slavery. But so she brought into her marriage with Niels Otto Mortensen those 6 children. He already had 6 children, and then they had 8 more. And so it was interesting to get the more complete picture of their life together. And I don't think I know everything, but I certainly know more now than I knew before. Along with enough that I think it's important that I, under stories, post this article from Pioneer Women of Faith and Fortitude so that somebody else can read it in one sitting instead of having to spend a week looking up sources before they find the whole story. My husband wants to give you a geology lesson. I think I'm going to tell him it has to be 30 seconds or less.
This is a history lesson. You know where Parowan is? Go to Parowan and then go underneath the freeway and head west on the blacktop, and it'll lead you out to the Parowan Gap. And there, in about a half mile, there are 1,500 Indian artworks waiting, and they're
petroglyphs, etc.
Right there on the road. They paved a walking area, and if you like Indian art, petroglyphs, it's a lot of good stuff to see. Amen.
Some people believe that the significance of that is about the same as Chaco Canyon in New Mexico. So that was quite a lesson. They think that the beginning of those petroglyphs probably happened about 400 years after Christ's death. So that was interesting. Tonight, our purpose is to talk about the beginning of doing family history. So I want to tell you about 3 basic rules that you should do when you're doing family history. The first is you always work from what you already know and then get to the point where you can find out what you don't already know. So you work from the known to the unknown. And then in the course of doing that, find out what people already know before you start finding out what you don't know, because maybe they've already done that research. The DUP ladies who wrote the books, Pioneer Women of Faith and Fortitude, already knew about Joanna Lewis Mortensen. And so by finding out what they already knew, I didn't have to go back and research it. And I don't think I would have gotten the story myself if I wouldn't have been able to get it from what was already known. And the first thing that we do is we figure out what is already known and what we already have in our home that might tell us about more people, about somebody, or else about people that we know. John, did you catch it?
Yeah.
Good. Diane, he caught your throw.
I've been watching football.
Good job, John.
Good pass.
And so tonight we're going to talk about the beginnings of what we would do with Family Search. And if we have enough time, we're going to get to what ancestry would also help us as we determine what is already known, but I don't think we're going to have time. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and tell you a few things. And I think that in this case, I am speaking to the choir. I think that each of you probably already know these things that I'm going to talk about at first.
And there's the choir right on our screen.
What did you say, John?
I said, there's the choir right on our screen. That was your
Yes.
phone.
Yes, right before I turned it on. When I open up my screen, the first thing I get is my Google page. And right here is a bar of, it's called the favorites bar. And if you open up a site by typing in the address or searching here on Google, and then you click this star button, and after you click the star button, if you click on the line that says add to bookmark bar, the bar, then an icon for that address is going to show up right here. And so I did that a long time ago for both Family Search and for Ancestry. So now when I'm ready to start Family Search, all I have to do is click on that bar, on that icon, and I get it. Now, because of who the audience is tonight, I think that you already all knew that. Family Search is divided into 3 main sections. There is the family tree section, there is the searching records section, or doing research section, and then there's the activities. And so tonight we're going to talk about the tree section and about the account. In order to use Family Search, we have to create an account. And the first time we open up Family Search, it's going to give us the option to create an account or to sign in. Or if we are already signed in, we can just click on Family Tree and it will open right up. And when we create our account, we are given the option to, well, I think I have to go ahead and sign in. So because I'm opening the sign in button first, it opened up because I was already opened up, okay? And when I click at my name, I get the word settings. And the settings button has some important things there that we need to make sure we know about, because sometimes they'll matter. And we're given the option to change things to private or public on many of these things. And the way we'd change them is we'd go here to the edit button. So like if I wanted people to call me Mary Jane instead of call me Nancy K or Nancy, then I could change my contact name and put Mary Jane. I have decided that my full name and my username are going to be private, but that people can contact me publicly. So I clicked on that. Other public information that I put down was my mailing address, because I would like people to be able to write me a letter if I have information or they have information that I don't have. But I don't necessarily want them to know my birth date. I am giving them my phone number and my email. And this is not my personal email. This is an email I use. I used to use it only for family history. But then because I wanted this email address to be the one that was on my family search, and since family search and the church logins are now hooked together, now all of my email that comes from church sources also comes to this address. So that information is there for me. Now, here is the number that's on my temp recommend. And we would use that if we wanted somebody else to look at our tree and help us. So that's nice to have that on there. One of the things that really is important to us if we have non-LDS relatives is this one that says show temple information. Because if I was helping a cousin that was not a member of the church, I would want to click off temple information so that I could discuss why I was baptizing their relatives at a better time than just the first time I show them my stuff that's on family search. I also have a notifications button, which tells me information about how other people can get a hold of me if they see my name or have questions about something I've done on family search. And I chose yes on everything except on text messages. And I need to pay more attention when I get a genealogy questionnaire. So I don't want to receive it by text. So I click no. Some people are going to click that they do want text messages. Permissions is all related to, are mostly related to partner access sites. So I'm not going to talk about that right now. Up here is a help button, message button. You might remember my lesson last week. I sent somebody named Roach Wharton a message saying my brother was alive. Here, and then here's the information about me. So let's go to Family Tree and look up tree. And that will take us to our main, it's going to automatically open up to a pedigree chart. Now, the only amount of pedigree chart that it is going to show is the amount of pedigree chart that you gave the ward clerk when you were baptized. Unless somebody that is your ancestor also had given them more information, or you therefore connected into them. A lot of the young kids in our wards are newlyweds, and they are alive, and their parents are alive. And when they first open up their family search, it does not show their grandparents. And the reason it does not show their grandparents is the privacy rules. And these privacy rules are legal, but they're also just common sense that we should be able to have information about our living relatives private. And if we are alive, our information should be private. And that is why I was concerned that my brother Lyman, or Randy, was listed as deceased, because that made then information about him available to others, which I didn't want. And by the way, we've solved that problem. And before we solved it, we discovered that all 4 of us siblings that are still alive were all listed as dead. That came from indexing, where somebody indexed a church census without paying attention to the fact that it was very likely that some of the people that were listed in the census were still living. But so this is the pedigree chart. Now I have the pedigree chart. There are 4 ways that we can view the pedigree chart. And I have it as there are landscape, portrait, fan chart, or descendancy. And so I have it on landscape. Now I'm going to make it smaller so that we can see a little bit more and talk about it. If I click on my father, well, I'm just going to go ahead and click on portrait. It's going to show a pedigree chart based on who has pictures in the system. And I have that many pictures. So I could print up a pedigree chart that showed the pictures of my family this far back. Or I can click on fan chart, and the fan chart, isn't that what you're going to talk about tonight, Diane?
I'm just gonna do 5-minute, like a little 5-minute tour of family tree, of the pet tree view. That's all.
Of the,
I probably won't go into depth with anything. I'm just gonna show them where everything is.
okay. When you are looking at your pedigree chart, whatever view you're in is going to have this options tab. And you can click on the options tab and it will tell you the options that you have for this particular view. So on the fan chart, the only options I have is to change the colors. Some people would prefer to read in black. I prefer to read in white. You can choose that. We don't have it connected to DNA, but you can get a chart that tells you where you came from based on your birthplace of your family members. So if on mine, it uses yellow to show Denmark. So my Niels Otto Mortensen I talked about earlier is from Denmark, so he's yellow. John Wilden's from England. So that's why he's this off pink color. Also, we could see how much research has been done on various people based on how many sources they have, and how much is written on people based on their stories, based on their photos, and research help, and ordinances that need to be done. And so we can look at it that way. Now, if we go back from fan chart and look at landscape, our options are going to change. So one of the options that I'm going to scoot this over a little bit. One of the options that I have is to show whether or not temple ordinances are available, or in progress, or would be available if I had more information. So for example, this says that there's a temple ordinance available for Charles's grandfather. Right off, I'm not remembering what that would be. Oh, it's because he has daughters that recently died that haven't had their temple work done. But so here I can see the icons about temple ordinances. I can see the icons about record hints, about research suggestions. If there's any data that they would like standardized or more information on, portraits, marriages. So I can do all of those and watch how, as I turn different things off, watch how the space that this much information takes changes. Record hints, no change. Research suggestions, no change. Data problems, no change. Portraits, when I turn off portraits, there's room for more generations to show. Marriages, there's even still more room for information to show. So what information does show in regards to marriages? if one of these people had been married twice, here is a down arrow by my mother because she is my father's spouse. If I click on that down arrow, I see my father's other marriage. And if I click on this down arrow that says children, I get a list of all of my siblings. So from this view, I can see children and I can see different spouses. So I could, if I wanted to know more about Grandpa's first wife, I could click on that name, and then I would see information about her. Also, from then on, if I left that on there, when I opened up, I would see her as at the top of the list of his spouses. But I want the grandmother to be on the top. So I have that way. And then of course, to see more generations, you click on the arrow pointing that way. To decrease those number of people, you click on the arrow pointing back towards you. Now, I am alive, and Charles is alive, and all of our children are alive. My children are entered into Family Search, but no one will ever see them except me because of the privacy laws. Now, Charles has also entered the same children in his Family Search, but I can't see them. Now, you will notice that beside each person in Family Search altogether, there's a computer-generated number. And so right down here is my number. And my daughter here has a computer-generated number. But Charles's view of my daughter, our daughter Melvina, is different. It has a different number than mine does. And that's because of the privacy rules. Someday, they likely will figure out the legal implications and computer and the programming issues so that Charles and I can have the same number and see the same screen for our living relatives, specifically our children, but they haven't figured that out yet. So for the time being, the information about our children, I'm the only one that can see it when I'm signed in. And partly because of that, I have not been very dedicated about putting in all the information about all my kids. Because I'm the only one that sees it anyway, and I have a better record of it elsewhere. But so that is the basics about the pedigree chart. Now, as long as we clicked Family Tree to get the option tree, and here are some other things that we do in the tree that are important. So for example, if I clicked person, immediately it would go back to me. If I click recent, it is going to show me all of my recent people that I have searched, and then it will pull them up. So instead of having to go to Niels Otto Mortensen on my pedigree chart, I can just go to recent, and there's Niels Otto Mortensen, and if I click on his name, I get his page. So that is a handy way to be able to get right to somebody. Or I can go back to me. Now, if I was looking for Niels Otto Mortensen's wife, Elizabeth Carson, and I didn't want to go to find her by looking at Niels first, I could go to find, and I could type in her information, and then the system would pull me up a list of possibles, and I could choose from them. And so this is also a way, for example, if I'm talking to my sister about her husband's family, she can tell me their name and I can look them up. They're not on my tree, but I can still find them by looking up if I have their name and their birth place in year, that's usually enough to be able to find them. Or she could tell me their computer identification number, and I could click right on Find by ID, and it would go right to them. So that's a useful thing to be able to do. Following is a button that didn't used to be here. And here is a list of the people that I have said are important enough for me that I'm going to follow them. And so I turned their star from white to black. And I will show you that when we get to the individual page about each person. And here is a list of everybody that I clicked on their star and said I wanted to know if anybody put any additional information about them that I wanted to know. So here it tells me that my dad, Mark Everett, had a story attached by Alice, who is my sister. And so that is a new thing for my dad. So if I hadn't read that story lately, then I could look it up and read it. The same with my mother. The same with, here is someone named Richard Wade. And this person has added information about Richard Wade on June 6th. That's today. So I could check and see what new information they have put down. It is a really good idea, I think, to read what people are adding to Family Search. And so one of the notifications that I had over here under my sign in, under the settings, was that I wanted to get an email once a week if anybody changed anything on my stories. And I'm glad that I did that. Now you see, one of the reasons it's interesting is here, it says that someone has deleted a child, has deleted the mother. So Serapha Michael is no longer listed as the mother of Daniel Fury. And so I'm going to want to check and see why she thinks that, why this person thinks that, and compare it. And here's another child from the same mother that they deleted. And I kind of think I know what that is, but I want to look up to make sure that I can follow what's going on. Now, why do I want to do that? There are advantages and disadvantages to Family Search, and there are advantages and disadvantages to Ancestry. And if we want to get the most bang for our buck in our research time, we want to search both Ancestry and Family Search. We want to use them both. And so, but I need to know the strengths of each in order to get the best use out of each one. Family Search is a shared family tree. That means that if I put in Mark Franklin Everett, everybody else can see what I put in about him, and they can add stories or other information about him. The advantage is that people can do that. We can share and collaborate. The disadvantage is that sometimes either we, but more likely they, that make changes don't know as much about the situation as we do, and some of the information is incorrect. Now, because we have this list of people that change things, then we can talk to them and say, oh, why do you think this? And, oh, I thought that, and communicate and find solutions to what was the best there. The contributions button is one I think is a lot of fun. It is not going to really teach me any much, but it's fun to be able to know about it. So here are changes or things that I have put into Family Search through the years. So today I followed a hint for my husband's grandmother and added it as a source. So that is one of the changes that I have made. And I can go on down and look at other things that I have added and changed. And I think it's going to show me just things I have added since 2021, but maybe if I keep going, it's going to take me further down. But it's interesting sometimes to see what you've done, but that is not quite as essential to research as some things are. So those are the things that we see across the board when we click on person, or when we open up the family tree. Now, the next thing we want to do is see what we can find out about each person beyond that. So I am going to choose my grandpa just for no particular reason. So here I choose my grandpa, and I've always called it an index card. I think Family Search calls it something different than an index card. But so this is the index card for my grandpa, and it gives me his name, his picture because I put in the picture, his computer ID number, and then here is the star. And like I said, it used to say watch, and now it says follow. But when I click on it and turn it black, then that is when I will now start getting the information up here in the word following anytime anyone changes anything to his card. So the card has basic birth and death information, a little bit about his temple work, a little bit about how many sources people have added. But if I want to see his page, I have two ways to get there from here. His own personal page. I can either choose his name or I can choose person. And either of those will take me to his page. And so now let's walk through the items on his page, just the same as we walked through the pedigree chart. Now, I think I'm going to stop before I do that, and I'm going to look at the window and see what you look like. So I think I'm talking to people and not just to myself. I'm seeing 6 pictures. Are there only 6 people right now?
7.
I can't see that thing while I'm sharing my screen. Now, I know that each of you already knows these things. The Sparkses know very well. Diane knows it very well. John knows it very well. Brother Chestnut has learned so much that he knows it well. Alice knows it well enough. She's teaching her daughter-in-law and helping her husband with it. So this is not new.
And Angel is also there.
What did you say, John?
I said Angel just is also there. She's put a picture on now.
Who, Angel?
Yeah, Angel
Yeah.
Viking.
I'm on the phone.
Oh, there she is. Okay. I was going to say, I'm not seeing anybody else's picture. Angel also already knows these things. My purpose in starting with this that you already know is we're kind of starting at the beginning again, and then we'll move out. And so today we're talking about navigating Family Search through the tree. And then another day we'll talk about searching, and another day we'll talk about land records and all of the different expanded things. So I'm glad you're here. I hope I'm not too boring. So here is my grandpa. In order to change his picture, if I wanted to change his picture, I would click on it and it would give me the option of editing it, removing it, or replacing it. And if I were to say replace, it would show me all of the pictures of my grandpa that are in Family Search and under the memories section, and give me a chance to choose something different. And you know, I'm just satisfied with how it is. So I am going to turn that off and leave it like it is. Something else that I can do is I can look at his tree. If I click there, I see what his pedigree chart looks like. And if I click here, I can see how I am related to him. So here you can see that I'm Nancy and my dad is Mark, and this is Mark's parents. Now, that's a simple time. Sometimes we look at somebody that it's much, much farther back and more complex. Something that Alice and I need to do, and maybe she's already done it. We were talking yesterday about how her husband has an ancestor named Thomas Rogers who was on the Mayflower. And I said, well, we have a Thomas Rogers who was a sailor on the Mayflower, but he didn't stay in Plymouth. And Alice says, oh, I think Wicks's Thomas Rogers was on the Mayflower Compact. So we need to research that a little bit more so we can find out if Alice is related to her husband through a common ancestor that was on the Mayflower. And we'll be able to do that by pulling up that ancestor and clicking on relationship and then following it down. And she can do that for Wicks's ancestor and for her ancestor, and they can figure out if they're related. So that's kind of a nice little button that's there. If we come further on down, we have these options, and these are the main things that we can do so much from this page, but this is the basic ones. Life sketches. There's no life sketch by my grandpa. I thought I had written life sketches for most of my ancestors. What have you put in as a life sketch for the ancestors on your line? Anybody want to mention anything about that?
Nancy, Miss Angel. I added a little bit like if on their obituary I added, and then I also then went and asked people who were still alive, like a little bit like what were they famous for? Like I had no idea that one who was like an expert gardener and took such pride in his gardens, and like little things they remembered as a child, and added that in the life sketches.
Okay. I think we can each kind of add it the way we want it. And we can, because it's a common tree, we can add more to something that somebody else has put in. One thing that the church would like us to do, or Family Search would like us to do, is if there are questions that have been solved by research, we should include that in a narrative. So like, for example, maybe it would be appropriate for us to mention in Charles's life sketch that he was adopted by Leroy Hugo when he was 3 years old. So that maybe that would help other people understand why he was born before his parents were married. Or if there's questions about specific birth dates or places or something, that might be a good time to make sure that that question is answered there. It could also be added under collaborate, but it would be good to put it there. Vitals is birth, marriage, death, burial. So that isn't extraordinary. Other information. This would be if we knew of places that they had lived or done, things they had done. Here's the add information tab. And these are suggestions that it's listing. So for example, I think it would be appropriate under military service for us to put a comment about Charles, well, and even my dad, that they served in World War II. And in regards specifically in Charles's dad, I think that we would want to list that he received the Purple Heart and the Bronze Star when his legs were blown off of the landmine. I think that would be an appropriate thing to put under other. Also, often people put down in there places that they lived and things that they did. Now, family members. This is where we get an abbreviated family group sheet. It lists the grandpa and his spouse. Further down, it would list a second spouse if he had had one. It lists all of the children, and we can tell by the picture here whether they're male or female. It tells his parents and all of his siblings. So we can get a pretty quick view of what his family is like. And something that often that is important is that the marriage information, there's not a place that it says fill in this blank for marriage information. Instead, we click on this little pencil with an eraser on the end, which is where we would usually edit things. And so here, when we choose this, it's going to give us a menu that gives us information to put in about their marriage, and if the spouses were different or something, it gives us information to put all of that in. So that's a good thing to know. Now, the next important part, because I've got 5 minutes left, is what's over here on the left side of the screen. Sometimes the church has come up through algorithms in the computers that there are certain things that we might want to check on for research. Sometimes they're hints, like for example, the one I did today, it said, oh, great grandma has been found in billion graves. So I added that hint about billion graves. Sometimes it will say, this child was born before his parents were married. So that's going to be something you're going to kind of want to check out and see if it's accurate. Down here is information about searching other records. If I click on Ancestry and it will take me immediately to a link to Ancestry as long as I have him on my Ancestry tree. So that is very handy that I can go that easily to the partner sites of Family Search. Now, down here it lists changes. Now, the changes that have happened to my grandpa lately are all stories and photos that Alice has attached lately. And she's been very busy attaching photos and stories to our relatives. But maybe somebody did something else, like maybe they merged him and because he needed to be merged or he didn't need to be merged. But if I click on Show All Changes, I will be able to go back through and see what changes have been done. And like I said, Alice has been real busy. You can go through here and see story after story that Alice added about our grandpa. So that is a good thing to be able to look at. Now, if I were to look up me on my page, I would see that I had been listed as dead and that was resolved, and I'm not, I'm still living. So that's where I could find the history of that change is on that More button. And especially if somebody had merges or incorrect information added or correct information accidentally taken out, those things would all show under the latest changes. Now, tools give us the ability to change things to our grandpa along these lines. Sometimes there will be that person listed twice, and it will give us a chance to merge those two people. Sometimes we will need to know their numbers in order to merge them, and so we can merge them by ID. In rare cases, somebody is abusing their privilege of changing things too much, and we could report that they were doing that too much. Sometimes we're allowed to delete a person that we've entered. In this case of my grandpa, it says, no, you can't do that. And this over here is something that a lot of us haven't paid too much attention to, and that is that we can go in and print a pedigree chart or a family group sheet of this ancestor. And we have the option of printing a pedigree chart with or without pictures or as a fan chart. And we also have the option of printing the family with all of the sources listed. So for example, I have 15 sources listed for my grandpa, about that many for my grandma, and about a whole bunches for each of all of his children. And if I wanted to be able to have a copy of his family group sheet with all of those sources, then I can print it up. Usually, and if I'm using it as a research tool, I usually will just print up the family. So this week, after going to the cemetery in Parowan and looking at Find a Grave, I could tell that some of the people whose graves we visited did not have enough information entered in Find a Grave, meaning they didn't have their parents and children and siblings listed. And so I wanted to make those changes. And the easiest way to write down all of their memorial numbers for Find a Grave was to write them on the family group sheet. So I clicked on family group sheet, and it pulled up the family group sheet for Niels Otto Mortensen, and it will pull this up in a minute. And then I can choose print, and it will print that out for me. Now, in the olden days, we all did genealogy on paper, and then we would have printed out this family group sheet when it was complete and put it in a binder. And because we're becoming more and more just dependent on the computer, we don't do that as much today. But like I said, sometimes we're going to want to do it as a tool for further research or further study. So make sure that you remember that you can print out those family group sheets. It is time for our closing prayer. Before we have our closing prayer, does anybody have any questions?
I have a few questions.
John?
Yeah, I had some, but not specifically on what you talked about. I just had an overall question. I found a guy that while I was looking for another guy named Antonio Meza, I found another guy, Antonio Meza's death certificate at Fort Bliss, Arizona in 1914 with just his approximate age, his name, and the fact that he had been a soldier with who was the guy? Pablo.
Oh, gee whiz, I should remember that name.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't read it. It's too little, but Pancho Villa.
Pancho Villa, yeah.
He fought for the Mexicans in Pancho Villa and apparently got shot. And they brought him across the border to Fort Bliss, Texas, where he was in the hospital there for 2 years and died.
Oh.
And we have absolutely no information on him or anything else. How do I get his temple work done? I don't know.
You need to have his name,
I have his
a date of an event, and a place of an event.
But I can't attach it to a relative of my own.
Oh, well, that's the
I know
problem.
of. He may be by name. And
Well, and so you can do, well, John, we're going to have to talk about that when it's not time for the closing prayer and for
Okay.
Diane's 5-minute quick lesson.